and welcome to the Zonta Club of Santa Clarita Valley's Life Forward Workshop. Master your money before it masters you. What is your mindset? Presented by Melanie, Meyer. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this workshop this morning. I am Beth Heiserman, Vice President of the Zonta Club of the Santa Clarita Valley. I would also like to introduce our President's Club, Club President Nicole Miller. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the chat. Please send any questions during the presentation to the chat. Submit questions here. To make all of our guests feel comfortable today while we are recording this workshop, we have privacy settings. Feel free to click on the stop video to disable your camera. This presentation will be recorded live on Facebook and will be uploaded and available to view on our website and YouTube. Please like and subscribe to our videos. Please feel welcome to share this with your friends and family. We are requesting that everyone remain muted until we do the question and answers. It will only record the host. Please feel free to share this presentation with your friends and family. And please visit our past workshops on our website at scvzonta.org and on YouTube. And now I present Phyllis Walker, Chair of our Life Forward Committee.
And I would like to welcome everybody to this important and timely Life Forward workshop. As we said, master your money before it masters you. What is your mindset? It gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Melanie Meyer. Melanie is a wealth advisor with Thrivent Meyer Klein Group Financial Planning in Santa Clarita. She is a certified financial planner, chartered life underwriter, and Fraternal Insurance Counselor with professional expertise for all life stages of financial planning, taxes, insurance, estate planning, and retiring. Wow, she is very qualified. And she is committed to providing financial advice, investments, insurance, banking, and generosity programs to help people in the Santa Clarita make most of all they've been given. The firm Thrivent is a membership-owned holistic financial services organization that believes money is a tool, not a goal. As financial representatives, the goal is to establish an ongoing relationship with clients to help help reach financial goals. Melanie is committed to providing financial advice, investments, insurance. I think I've already read that, so let's just go forward and say, now, Melanie, the stage is yours to share your experience and help us learn how we can manage our money.
That was fantastic, Phyllis. Thank you. So let me just start by saying thank you for joining us. And you probably already know this, but there's those little reaction buttons down at the bottom. I'm going to ask you a question. You can either raise your hand or do the reaction button, but I always like to start with just a question. So what I would do is ask, raise your hand if at some point in your life you have feel that money has mastered you instead of you mastering money. So I'm going to be the first one to raise my hand. And I think most of us at some point in our lives have thought that, or it's happened to us. Our emotions and how we approach our finances or our money are very intertwined. We all grew up with examples, sometimes really good examples, sometimes bad examples regarding money management. And those experiences are either how we learned to have money master us or how we learned how we can master it. So this morning, I want to go over just a few things. Number one, I want to talk about a little bit about where you are now, where you want to go, why it's important to you. Two, I'm going to provide you some very basic financial tips, but Q&A, we can go into as much detail as you want. And then number three, I'm ultimately going to give you a resource that you'll be able to access after our time together here today. So let's get started. First question. Where are you today? So many times people approach this by looking at like a current situation and then comparing it to where you ultimately want to be. It's basically goal setting, But the word goal is thrown around so much today, I think it's somewhat confusing. So a goal is simply a dream or a vision. And when you apply it to your life, that goal, that dream, that vision gives you a sense of purpose and a deep sense of motivation. And we all have a deep motivation that truly fuels our life, and it directs our goals. And discovering that motivation, that fuel, that why we do something is sometimes really hard to figure out. And it's really hard to figure out when life brings change. So really, the only way to figure out your motivation or that goal or that why is to ask yourself as many really thoughtful, difficult questions as possible to help you figure that out. So I'm going to go over just a few of those questions that I think are really good ones. The first one would be, why do I do this? Why do I work? Why do I volunteer? We all have a different answer for that, but it's an important one. Why do you do this? Why? Another question would be, why do you value something over something else? Is it a brand name? Is it generic? Is it, whatever it happens to be? Another question would be, why am I not happy when this happens? Or why does this experience make me really happy? Another question would be, do I enjoy recognition? Do I like being thanked? Do I like to hang out in the background and just silently contribute? We all have different motivations. Another question would be, why am I stressed now? And I think that one's been a really good one, especially in these last couple of years when life has changed drastically in a very short amount of time period. So frankly, those questions that he just listed, I can provide them to you. I don't necessarily have a handout, but I'm happy to send them on to the team. But those questions are hard to answer. And I think in order to understand the why of what we do and ultimately understand your own personal goals, identify your motivations, you really just have to take, kind of like a shovel and dig deep into your conscious mind by asking yourself those types of questions. And so here's a technique that I have sometimes used just with myself to dig deep into that motivation. And I'll use some of my examples as the reasons here. So one of the questions could be, Melanie, why is it important for you to work? Well, the answer would be, because I earn money and I have to pay my bills. Well, then the next question would be, well, what is important about earning money and paying bills? Well, because it gives me the ability to, money gives me the ability to do things that I care about. And then the next question would be, well, what is important about doing the things you care about? And my answer could be, that there's a variety of answers, but that's kind of the strategy that I want you to think about. Ask yourself the big picture question, and then whatever the answer is, say, what is important about that? And you can just go deeper and deeper and deeper into the layers. It can go on, and it ultimately can be somewhat difficult to answer those questions. But if you keep doing it over time, it's probably going to help you dig deep down and figure out what really is truly important and what that why is that is yours. Once you can get to that point, and it's not easy, you are much more likely to be able to develop techniques that will help you master your money before it masters you, because you know why you are making decisions regarding your money. So let's explore that why, that motivation, that goal can have on your finances, and how you can learn to master it. So let's start with some very basics. The first one is credit. So what is credit? Credit is when you are seeking to purchase goods or services today and basically pay for them at a later date. You are being trusted by whatever organization you are requesting this from to make a final payment at some point in the future. So now, why is credit important? There's a number of reasons, but a couple examples would be, let's say you move into a new home and you don't want to sleep on the floor while you're saving up money to buy a mattress. Well, credit will allow you to purchase that mattress before you've saved up enough money to do so. Another example would be, let's say the engine in your car dies or you need new tires or something. Well, of course, that's not something you've anticipated happening, but you need the car to get to school or to get to work or daycare or whatever it is. And so you might need credit to repair the car or buy new tires so that you can go to work or go to school or drop off kids at daycare, whatever it happens to be. So again, those are just two very quick examples of why you want to at least have access to credit. But credit is only available if you have established a favorable credit record. So how do we even do that? When you apply for credit, you need to have some type of regular income. So you need to show regular income, like from a job, from alimony, from disability government benefits, retirement benefits, Social Security benefits, investment income, rental income. There's a number of ways to show income, and that's the first step of obtaining credit. The second way to obtain credit would be to apply for just a small amount of credit, maybe from a bank or a lending institution, especially if you don't have any credit established on your own at this point. If you establish a small amount of credit and then pay it off right away, it is the start of a good track record that you have the ability to pay back that credit. And you have to start somewhere. So start small if that's what you need to do. Another option would be to get help from someone else with good credit, maybe a joint signature or a jointly owned credit card. Now, the key there is that you can't just be an authorized user, you actually have to be a joint card holder. So just a few quick examples. I can send more examples, but for today's purpose, I don't want to go so deep into the weeds on those types of things. But once you have established credit though, it is a constant process to keep a good credit score. Monitoring your credit score to make sure it's correct, to make sure there's no fraud is very, very important. And you have the right, once you have established credit, to receive one free credit report annually from each of the 3 credit reporting agencies. And I would absolutely encourage you to do this. Make it a New Year's resolution. It's one of the things that you check off every January that you're going to do. And I can provide information on how to request this information if you want it. The 3 organizations are Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And again, I can provide to the Zonta ladies how to request that information. Now, when you are establishing credit, some of the criteria that lenders will use in order to give you credit are as follows. One is, do you just have a checking account and a savings account? You need to have something that shows you have a bank account somewhere. They're also going to want to know how old you are. They're going to want to know if you own a home or you rent an apartment. They basically want to see that you have some kind of track record of making payments to something already. They want to know how long you've lived at that current address, how long you've owned the home, or how long you've rented the apartment. They want to know what your income is, and they want to know how long you've worked at your current job. And almost more importantly, this is probably a big one. They want to know what your expense to income ratio is. Now, what that means is, out of all of the income that you have coming in, if 28%, the standard ratios are about 28% should be used for your housing, and 36% should be used for your housing and all other debt that you have. So if your ratios are higher than that, it is possibly either going to be more difficult to get credit or more expensive for you to get credit. So those are just some very basics when it comes to what credit is, and then how we use it and how you get it. There's lots more to talk about when it comes to credit, but I want to move on because this next topic also involves credit. Credit is important. It's important to make good decisions with credit, primarily because of what we call the power of compound interest. Now, compound interest can either be a good thing in some areas of our finances, or it can be a bad thing, depending on how compound interest is being used. So first of all, what is compound interest? Albert Einstein, obviously a very smart man, called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. Because just like I said, compound interest can work either for you or it can work against you. So compound interest is simply the interest on a loan or a credit card or an investment or a savings account or a checking account that is accumulated over a period of time on that initial dollar amount. So does that clear it up? Probably not, right? So let me go into a little bit of an example. Let's say you have $200 invested, and if you earn compound interest at 3%, and I know you're thinking, where in the world am I going to get interest rates at 3% today? But let's just go with it and use it as an example. So if you have $200 saved and you're going to get compound interest at 3%, after 1 year, your $200 will have grown to $206. Now, compound interest does not mean that next year, if you keep the $206 invested, you're going to have $212. And then it doesn't mean that you get another $6 every single year. Compound interest means that you will earn 3% on the $200 that you saved, plus the $6 you earned in the first year. So instead of just having $206, $212, $218, you're going to get more built on top of all of those other earnings. So as an example, in year 2, instead of $212, you'll have $212.18. Now, that seems very minimal and not that much, but let's add a zero. Let's say you have $2,000 invested. After 1 year, you'll have $2,060. After 2 years, you'll have $121. After 3 years, $2,185. So it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you're earning even more than 3%, see how amazing and how huge those numbers could actually be. Now, while that concept sounds great for money that you are saving, it's working for you when you're saving money, but it's absolutely working against you when it comes to credit card debt, because many credit cards charge really, really high interest rates. So let's assume that you put that same $2,000 on a credit card instead of the savings account, and now it has an interest rate that you're paying on a credit card, 21%, which is not unrealistic these days, sadly. If it took you 6 years to pay off the credit card, you would have actually paid a total of $3,533 instead of just the original $2,000. So you would have paid a significantly larger amount instead of just that $2,000. So I hope that just gives you a really quick example of how compound interest can work for you in the example of saving money, but it's going to work against you when it comes to putting money on credit cards or debt or anything like that. So let's talk about, again, how compounding interest can work for you, because we want to talk about how you can master your money instead of your money mastering you. So let's go over some investment principles, some just basic investment principles. Now, when investing, you first want to start with a solid foundation. And a solid foundation for me means creating an emergency fund, basically a reserve fund for things that happen unexpectedly, so that you don't have to rely on credit. Let's use my example of buying the mattress when you move into a new place, or you need to put new tires on the car. If you have an emergency fund, then it gives you the ability to use the money in those emergency funds instead of putting it on credit card. So a rule of thumb to work toward is to have somewhere between 3 and 6 months of living expenses available in a checking account or a savings account. But here's how it's going to work. You're going to get the 3 to 6 months saved, and then the car's going to need new tires, or the water heater is going to go out, or something's going to happen, and you're going to deplete that emergency fund. And then you're going to start all over and build it all back up again. That emergency fund, in my experience, is always, always, always a work in progress. And it's hard to create the 3 to 6 months of living expenses. But if you can do that, you will go a long way toward mastering your money instead of it mastering you. Now, let's talk about a second strategy when it comes to saving and investing. Think about what your time horizon is. And when it comes to, especially when it comes to investing, one of the first questions you should ask yourself is, when am I going to need the money? Will I need it in 1 year? Will I need it in 6 months? Will I need it in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years? What is the time frame? Your time frame and how you answer that question is going to have a significant impact on your investment strategy and the ultimate choices that you make. Once you've determined your time frame, then you can determine your risk temperament. So I want to ask you a question, and this is something when I'm talking to people about investments, this is what I always ask them. How would you feel about the value of your investment going down? And I'm going to give you an example, and you can use your little reaction sheet or reaction icon if you want to use again. So how would you feel if you were to have invested $1,000 and a few months from now, that $1,000 went down to $900? Would you be, okay, I'm okay with this because I don't need the money for a while, or I'm panicking, I don't like this, or I'm good because I understand this is how, some of the investing works? Any ideas of how we think that might be the case? I often also use the example of think back to 2008. If you were even investing at that point in your life, 2008, the thing that stands out for that year is it was the largest stock market crash since the Great Depression. And this is what happened. If you had $1,000, depending on how aggressively you invested it, it could have gone down to $600. So there's a temperament that you're going to feel comfortable with. And figuring out what that temperament is really, really important when it comes to investing. Because my job is to help you find something that's appropriate. But the second part of what I want to do is make sure that you're sleeping good at night, understanding why you've chosen what you have. Because if you sleep good at night, then I sleep good at night. Now, after you've determined your investment temperament, then you also want to determine how much liquidity you need. Now, and I know that kind of sounds like what the time frame question was a little bit earlier, but I want to talk about money in 3 different buckets simply for tax purposes. And I'm going to pull up a document, and I know you have this as a handout, so we can, let me get this pulled up here. You can take a look at that, or I can just kind of go over it. Can you see this? Yep, everybody's nodding their head. I can see that. Okay. So I want you to think about money in 3 different buckets. So here's a bucket, here's another bucket, and here's a third bucket. The first bucket is called tax now. It means that any money that you have in a checking account, a savings account, you can see some of the categories here: CDs, stock, dividends, bonds, treasuries, everything that's in this column, you will pay tax on as you earn it. So, as an example, let's say you've got money in a savings account. The pitiful amount of interest that we earn on our savings accounts right now, you would get a note, basically a 1099 from your bank saying you earned $6 or $10 on your savings account last year, and you have to add it on to your tax return and pay tax on the $10 that you earned. So that's why we call this column tax now. This is likely where you're going to have your emergency money. This is money that would be short-term money, money that you might need in 3 months or 6 months or a few years, but it's money that is immediately accessible if you need it at any given time. Now let's move to the middle column. This middle column is what we often see used for retirement dollars. So there's some rules that you have to follow with the money that's in this bucket. So usually money in this bucket, you can see the categories, would be 401k plans, pension plans, IRAs, annuity contracts are in there. There's some other things in here too. But all of the money in this bucket, if you have money in this bucket, the rules are that you are not supposed to touch it until you are 59 and a half. So if you're 20 or 30 or 40, that's a really long time. So that's why it's really important to determine what your time frame is, in addition to figuring out what the tax bucket is that you're going to put money in. Because if you take money out of this bucket too soon, meaning prior to 59 and a half, you're going to have a tax penalty. Now, putting money in this bucket is not a bad thing because it will help you reduce your current tax liability. And that's a conversation for a whole nother workshop possibly. But just know that any money that shows up in this bucket has some restrictions on it. Now let's move into the third column, tax never. This is my favorite column. Because of course, if we don't have to ever pay tax on anything, why wouldn't we put money in this column? Except there's some limitations on how much you are ever able to put into this column. So Roth IRAs are something that's fairly new in the financial industry. And by fairly new, I mean, they've been around for 20 years, 20 plus years actually. But that's new in the financial industry. Roth IRAs are a type of way to own money where you will ultimately never have to pay tax on the earnings. So think back to my conversation about compound interest. Let's say you put $2,000 into this account, and let's say 20 years from now, I didn't do a future value calculation, I should have done that for today, but let's say your $2,000 has grown to $50,000. The rules are still somewhat the same. You can't take money out until after 59 and a half. But when you do take money out, every dollar of that $50,000 will be tax-free. Why wouldn't we want money in this column? Well, it's because it's limited. Of course, we're not able to put all the money that we want into this. And again, that's for another conversation. But just my point of bringing this up today is that I think it's really important to have money in all three of these columns. Because here's what happens. What I see often is that people have most of their money in this middle column. And the middle column gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And they have very little, if anything, in this tax never column, because frankly, it's hard to put money in that column. And then they have some money in this tax now column. Now, I'm going to use an example of a retired client of mine. She had money in this tax now column, a bunch of money in tax later column, and not really any money in tax never column. And she's retired, doesn't have mortgage payment anymore. And she says, Melanie, I need to buy a new car. And she has money to do that. And this is probably the bucket we're going to take it from, because that's where the biggest source of dollars are. But the conversation I have with her is, okay, how much is the car? Oh, it's $30,000 or 20,000, whatever it is. Let's say it's 20,000. And I have to remind her that, well, you need to take out more than that because this is the tax later column. And when you take out 20,000 for the car, you actually have to take out more because you have to pay tax on the 20,000. So then in her mind, she's thinking, oh my gosh, well, do I really need the new car? Because I don't really want to take that much out of this bucket. And so if she would have had money in this tax never bucket, it would have been an easy decision. We could have taken $20,000 out, know that we don't have to pay any tax on it, and she'd be buying a new car. So that's just one example of why I think it's really important for you to have money in all three of these buckets. So just something to think about, put in the back of your head for ways to master your money. And let's go on. So now that you have money in hopefully all three of the buckets, you've figured out your time frame, you've figured out your risk temperament, what your comfort level is. The next thing to think about is what's called asset allocation. And it's also really important to do this because that saying of you don't want to have all of your eggs in one basket. So what does that mean? Does that mean I have an account here at one institution and another one in a different company? And so let's say I have an account at Fidelity and I have an account at Merrill Lynch and I have an account at Schwab. And is that diversification? Well, maybe, but not necessarily. Because if you have a large, let's say if you own Disney at Merrill Lynch and you own Disney at Schwab and you own Disney at, I don't remember what my other example was, that is not diversification. You have the same investment all over the place. So diversification means you have money in many, many, many different types of investments. So you need to own Disney, you need to own Intel, you need to own Microsoft. I'm not saying you should, but owning multiple companies is what diversification is, not different companies, not different investment companies. It means different types of investments, meaning maybe you should own some large company stocks like those examples I just gave you. Maybe you should own some international based stocks. Maybe you should own some bonds. Diversification means you own a variety of different types of investments. And let's use an example. Let's go back to that 2008 stock market crash. You can put this in the chat if you want. So I'm going to ask you a question. What do you think in 2008? No, let's use 2007. In 2007, what type of investment did the best? And I'm going to give you some choices so that you don't have to, figure out what I'm going for. You could say, I think large companies grew the most, or I think bonds grew the most, or I think treasuries grew the most, or I think international companies grew the most. Out of those just 4 categories, what do you think grew the most in 2007? Do we have anybody putting anything in the chat here? I'm just going to give you the answer eventually. So the answer was, it was large companies. So in 2007, large companies did the best. Here's the next question. What do you think was the worst place to have money in 2008? Remember, 2008 was the largest stock market crash since the Great Depression. It's the same answer. So in 2007, those large companies, Disney, Apple, Microsoft, Intel, all of those companies did fantastic in 2007. And in 2008, they were at the bottom of the list. What do you think was the best performing stock in investment in 2008? I'm not going to make you answer the question again. It was government bonds. So you can have the best performing investment in one year and then the worst performing investment the very next year. That's what diversification is. You want to have money in all of those categories because you don't know, I don't know which of those categories is going to perform the best in any given year. And at some point when you're going to be taking money out, think about if you only had money invested in large companies in 2008. You would not be happy if you had to take money out of your investment that year because it was way down in value. But if you would have had government bonds as well, we would have taken what you needed out of government bonds. So that's the point of diversification. You need to have a variety of different types of investments at any given time. So how do you get started during this investing thing even at all? First one is just to get in the habit of saving. Set aside a portion of your income on a regular basis. And remember, first create that emergency fund by moving money into a savings account and work on creating the 3 to 6 months of living expenses. And then once that's been established, then move on to saving in something that gives you diversification, that has a different time frame, that's in one of the 3 buckets, so that you have choices at some point. Now, I ultimately want you to overcome some of the emotional issues that go with investing as well, especially when we have market volatility. And frankly, I think in 2022, we are going to see some market volatility. The Federal Reserve Board has hinted that they're going to start raising interest rates. Raising interest rates is great for your savings account because you're going to get more interest on it. Raising interest rates is not so good for investments because investments are going to react to a rise in interest rates. In the short term, especially. Eventually they will figure it out and the stock market will recover. But in the short term, when we see interest rate increases, we will likely see some volatility for the stock market. But if you are invested, what you need to do is focus on the long-term potential. Meaning, I don't want you to pay attention to what happens to the stock market or the Dow on a daily basis. And then once you have all of these things determined, you are investing with your head. You have made good choices. You're not investing with your heart. You're not investing with your stomach. You have reasons, and you can probably articulate why it is you invested in what you did. And here's the other tip. Do not listen to the neighbor that is going to give you the hot tip of the month. It usually doesn't work. So work with a financial professional that can guide you in these things, and ultimately review the goals, review your why, review your diversification, review the buckets that you're in, review all of the things that you originally made the choices on to determine how you were going to invest. So mastering your money, I think, is an ongoing process. Goals change, priorities change, your why is going to change, and that's okay. It's just important to take that first step and then review and refine as needed. So I'm going to leave you because we are getting somewhat close to the time period that I should probably be stopping talking and answering some questions here. But I want to leave you with one last thing. I'm going to invite you to begin or begin your financial journey, or maybe continue, depending on where you are, by giving you access to something called Money Canvas. And I can provide the link to you all at the end of this. But Money Canvas, it is a free one-on-one coaching program that can help you see your money in a new way and help you build healthy budgeting, spending, savings, and investment habits. And it's really a starting point many times for you to begin mastering your money. So personally, I believe every single person deserves a financial plan. You deserve a plan, and this Money Canvas program is approachable. It offers personal financial guidance through, virtual coaching sessions. It's not me. It's not me. It's a person who has been coached and who can help you walk through these very basic concepts. So as I said, the link is going to be provided for all of you participants here today. And I do think it's a good first step in learning how to master money. So I'm going to stop right here because I've been talking very generically and very high level about lots and lots of topics. And so I just want to be able to, answer questions if you have any, if you want more clarification on anything, and see how we're doing today. I see some familiar faces. It's nice to see all of you, and I so appreciate you letting me be a part of this.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
When should someone seek a financial advisor, and what is the role of the advisor?
So the role can be different. I think the sooner you're going to start, the sooner you start working with a financial advisor, the better. Now, you can find financial advisors in all kinds of different areas. You can find them at a bank. A bank is going to have a coach that's going to help you set up a savings plan. You can use the Money Canvas program that's going to help you set up budgeting. There's online tools that can help you put together budgets. We can do that. You can find that in a number of places. Those places will have different ways of working with you. Some will just do it for free as a coaching service. Some you're going to end up paying for. So, I can provide a little bit more detail as to maybe where you would be personally, and then I could direct you into maybe the right place as well. What is the difference between a financial advisor and a financial fiduciary? I see that question. Basically, nothing at this point because of new security laws. A financial advisor has to have fiduciary responsibility. Fiduciary responsibility just means that I, as a financial advisor, absolutely must make the appropriate recommendations for you. It can't have anything that's going to benefit me. It has to be completely unbiased and what is going to be in your best interest. So there's been all kinds of new regulations that have come out in the financial industry recently. And if we are working with investments, anybody who's working with investments is a fiduciary and needs to be making those appropriate recommendations for you. Hopefully that answers. And I think I cut somebody off. Did somebody else have a question?
I was gonna read that question, which you saw, which is great. Thank you. And there's another question kind of going back to the credit.
Yeah.
For teenagers, what do you recommend in terms of how early should a parent introduce a credit card for a teenager? How does that work? And kind of what tips do you recommend for teaching teenagers how to manage money?
So I think things have changed, drastically over the years. I didn't even get a credit card till I was almost out of college. Now you get them sent to you and they're, here's, you've got a credit limit of several $1,000s when you're a freshman in college, and they're probably even doing it for high school. I don't know that, but I would establish the very basics of a checking account fairly early on in teenage years. Then right now, our lifestyle is that we don't write checks anymore. So I think a debit card is absolutely appropriate, but you can put some controls on those debit cards, meaning you can't charge more than, or you can't, use it for a dollar amount more than $200 or $500 or $50, or you can put some of those limits on there. So I would do that first. And then if you see some responsibility being created, you're going to be able to tell really quickly if a child is making good decisions on that or not. Then maybe start introducing them to a very, very low limit credit card, because they're going to be on their own in college. And if we can get them to understand how credit works and compound interest and the bad part of compound interest when it comes to a credit card, if they've learned some of those lessons in high school, they're just going to be so much better off in college and beyond as well. I feel like we all have to make maybe some bad decisions early on, but bad decisions with $50, $100, $250 is better than making bad decisions with $1,000, $2,500, $5,000. So I think they'll probably screw up at one point, but that's okay. That's what we're here to help them learn with.
when you were talking about the expense income ratio and you were talking about, housing and all other debt, there was a question about what if you don't rent or own, like nothing's in your name?
Yes.
How does that
That's-
affect it?
That's why it's hard to create credit sometimes. That's why I said, having a job is one of the first things, having some kind of history and not having that history when you are the owner or the renter it makes it hard to qualify for credit. Absolutely. If you could get your name on it as a co-owner, there's other issues that go along with that too. Do you want to be co-owner with somebody else? But that would help, certainly.
What do you see the question that just popped up?
Yeah, part of it.
Okay.
I have to read the whole thing. What recommendation would you make to teenagers just starting out working about how much of their paycheck they should put away? Wow, what a fantastic question. So you've probably all heard the 10-10-80 rule. It kind of works for this too. It's a very basic savings principle, although I sometimes think that it's maybe not enough at this point. So the concept is save, spend, and save, share, and spend. So save 10%, share 10%, and you get to spend the remaining 80%. If you can live on 80%, then the emergencies, the long-term savings things almost take care of themselves. Now, I often think that saving 10% should be a little bit more, but if you can start with the 10%, so 10% saving, 10% sharing, generosity is a big part of what I talk to people about. And I know you all understand that because that is what you do as your organization. And I think giving back to organizations that we care about helps you understand what your why is. There's a motivation for doing that. So if you can foster that and create that early on in people, I think that's really important. So the starting point though that I would do is save 10%, give away 10%, and then you've got 80% to do whatever you want.
I don't see any other questions. Are there other questions from the audience?
This is like perfect amount of time. We're almost at 11, so. You can certainly provide my email address to people. Sometimes questions like these are, they're too personal, so people want to just ask me directly instead of in a chat. I'm happy to respond back to anybody. You all have my email. I will. Did I send over the link for the money canvas? I think I did. No? Oh, Phyllis, you're muted, so.
I forget. You can send that to me. You have my personal email, which makes it easier to interact that way.
Yeah. There's no cost to that program. And then if you get through that program and you still have more questions, whatever it is, you can always get in touch with me. I'm happy to answer your questions. So yeah, I'll email the link to Phyllis. Okay, so any information that you have you want to be forwarded to the attendees, you can just do that. Yep, perfect. Perfect. All right, and I see we're on video. It's been recorded and posted already. It was a pleasure doing this. I so appreciate you in giving me the invitation. I'm hoping some of the very basic concepts were what you're looking for. And again, I'm happy to go deeper into any of them at any point. So I know we just kind of skimmed the surface of lots of things. So I guess if anyone should remember questions, they could forward them and then I would forward them on to you. Yes, that works too. Yeah, we could do that and then send it out. Yeah, in fact, I'm going to put my email address in here in the chat. if I can type correctly. There you go. Oh, actually, that was just to the club. Let me send it to everyone. There you go. Now everyone has it. All right. When is your next meeting or your next virtual get together?
Oh, okay. Are we ready to close now? So anyway, I'd like to say thank you, Melanie, for sharing the ways we can master our money. That is so important and so timely. So now I would like to say for everyone to mark your calendars. Our next Life Forward workshop is scheduled for Saturday, March the 12th, 2022, from 10 to 11:15. The topic is going to be how to cook on a budget and eat healthy. And that will be presented by our Zonta, Beth Heiserman, who at one time was a private chef. She is an expert in preparing healthy and tasty meals and really little goodies to eat, because she served those for Zonta many, many times. So I'll have to give her a big thumbs up for that. You will receive a flyer and the opportunity to register prior to the workshop on March the 12th. So I would like to say thanks to everyone for joining us. Check our website, zontascv.org, Life Forward Workshop page, and you can see all the previous workshop recordings, and to include information about the 2021 taxes. Unfortunately, that workshop was canceled. The workshop presented today will also be posted on our on that page. So everyone have a great day, and thanks again for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melanie.
Thank you.
Have a great